Hi, this is Grandma Lori, and today's story is Misty of Mystic Island. Far out at sea, there was a small island called Mystic Island. The island was beautiful, full of all kinds of animals only found there, but it was especially known for its herd of wild horses. These horses were allowed to run free. There were no fences, no barns, no saddles, no harnesses. The horses especially loved running along the cliffs and the beach, the wind blowing through their manes, tails flying. The younger ones were led by a white horse named Misty. Misty had a sparkly gleam in her eye. She was the only white horse born on Mystic Island. She loved that her best friends and her family surrounded her. She could run and run with nothing to stop her. Life on Mystic Island was wonderful. One day, a young boy named Ethan arrived on Mystic Island. His dad had just started working as the lead caretaker for the herd of horses. Ethan loved horses. He had grown up around them on his grandparents' farm. He would ride and ride all day if he could. As their plane was coming in for a landing on Mystic Island, Ethan looked out the window. "Dad! Dad! There are wild horses!" Ethan said excitedly. A large herd of wild horses was running along the cliffs. At the back of the herd was a beautiful white horse. Ethan couldn't wait to get on the ground so he could find the horses. Ethan spent every day with the herd of wild horses, learning about their habits and slowly gaining their trust. He especially loved Misty. She got so comfortable with Ethan that she would eat from his hand when he held out a carrot or a clump of grass. "Ethan, there's a storm coming. Make sure all the shutters are closed and anything that could blow away is put away in the yard," said Dad. "I need to make sure the herd is okay." As Ethan went about putting things away outside, Misty and her friends were in a panic. They could feel the storm coming. They needed to find shelter, but they didn't know where. As the storm rolled in, they tried to outrun it, but they couldn't. Dad arrived back home just as the storm hit. The rain battered the windows. The wind howled. Trees were blowing so hard they almost bent over in half. But all Ethan could think of was the horses, especially Misty. As the storm moved out, Ethan asked, "Dad, can I go make sure Misty is okay?" "I have to go see about the herd anyway," Dad said, putting on his raincoat and hat. "You can go with me, but don't run off. It's still not completely safe." Ethan ran to grab his raincoat and boots. Together, Ethan and Dad jumped into Dad's truck and headed for where they thought the herd was. The island was a mess. The storm had blown things all over the place. Trees were down. Electricity was out to most of the island. "I'm so worried about Misty, Dad. I need to find her," Ethan said. "She's probably just fine, Ethan. She's a smart horse. Like I said, it's still not safe, so don't run off," said Dad. As they arrived at the place where the herd usually lived, they found the fields empty. Ethan and Dad jumped out of the truck and ran into the field. The wind was still strong, so they had to be careful not to get blown over. "Dad, where'd they go?" yelled Ethan in a panicky voice. "They probably found shelter in the woods. Let's go look over there," Dad said as he grabbed Ethan's hand. They searched the woods for what felt like hours. They would find a horse here and there, but no Misty. Some of the horses were hurt, so Dad had to stop and help them, patching up their wounds and tagging those who needed more help than he could give them right there. Ethan was getting more and more afraid. He worried Misty was hurt and they couldn't find her. While Dad was wrapping up one of the legs of a horse, Ethan saw his chance. He slowly walked backwards until Dad was no longer in sight. Once he was away, he ran, calling for Misty. "Misty! Misty! Where are you? It's me, Ethan!" He remembered Dad stopping every once in a while to listen to the sounds on the island to find an injured horse. Ethan stopped, and after a few minutes, he heard a horse whinnying. He followed the sound to a large cave. She was there! Misty had gone into the cave for safety. "Oh, Misty, I'm so glad I found you," said Ethan. Misty looked up at him with love in her eyes. "Are you hurt, girl?" Ethan asked, looking Misty all over. Finding nothing, he stroked under Misty's chin, something she loved, and hugged her tightly. They sat together in the cave, and Ethan eventually fell asleep lying on one of Misty's legs. "Ethan, where are you? Ethan!" Dad called. He noticed Ethan had disappeared and was very worried. Misty whinnied, which woke up Ethan. "Dad, I'm in here!" Ethan yelled. Dad came racing into the cave, finding Ethan and Misty on the floor. He ran and picked up Ethan in a tight hug. "I was so worried. I thought I told you not to run off." Dad was almost crying. "I had to find Misty," said Ethan. Dad went over to Misty to look her over. "Well, it looks like you came through the storm without a scratch, young lady," Dad said as he patted Misty all over. Misty nuzzled into Dad's chest and let out a big snort. Dad and Ethan laughed. "See, I told you Misty was the smartest of all the horses," said Dad to Ethan. Dad put a rope on Misty's muzzle and led her safely out of the cave and back to the herd. As they walked, Dad handed the rope to Ethan. From that day on, Ethan and Misty were inseparable. They spent every day together. Misty even let Ethan ride on her bare back. They would fly across the cliffs with the rest of the herd, always with Misty in the lead. Ethan loved the feel of the wind in his hair and the smell of the grass. This has been Grandma Lori. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story.